a lot. So bank on us. We have a fantastic panel discussion, great speakers, and we have a fantastic moderator. You would have seen her at in action yesterday, Countney Fingar. She'll be our esteemed moderator, editor-in-chief, investment monitor. I hand it over to you, and I know that you will do a fantastic job as always. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the Bank on Us panel discussion.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm really pleased to be back today for another session. So thank you to the organizers for the opportunity. So throughout yesterday, we're obviously hearing about and talking about some of the big aspirations, development goals, development projects, and a lot of the dreams really around the region. And of course, to bring these dreams to fruition and to see these projects through, we need financing. So this is actually an extremely important panel, and what we'll do is try to talk through some of the options, what's on offer for financing, what are the pros and cons of different types of financing, and we have here representatives, senior officials from a range of institutions that do have a role to play in financing investment and financing development around the Caribbean. So I'm looking forward to hearing what bag of tricks you have, what do you have on offer for our delegates and for some of the partners here. I'll introduce them to you first, and then we'll work our way through the program. Next to me is Dr. Stacy Richards-Kennedy, who's a regional manager at CAF Development Bank of Latin America. She took up the role, I think actually the same day that Kristina took up her role, only a few months ago, and she leads the bank's institutional relationship and engagement with governments and the private sector clients in the Caribbean, so very well placed to talk through how the bank can actually support both the public and private sector here. And it's important to note that the establishment of a regional office for the Caribbean, which is located here in Trinidad and Tobago, is very much in line with the bank's commitment to expand its member countries and facilitate development around the region. So looking forward to hearing more about that. Next, we have Kristina Eisele, I hope I pronounced correctly, who's a representative for the Southern and Eastern Caribbean at the European Investment Bank, newly taken up her post. And again, I think we can say the existence of such a post and an office is also indicative of the European Investment Bank's commitment to funding projects in the region, in particular in promoting sustainable development around the region. Next, we have Nigel Baptiste, who's a group CEO of the Republic Bank Holdings. He's a career banker with 30 years of experience and sits on the board of the group's subsidiaries in Guyana, Ghana, Cayman, as well as various other subsidiaries in Trinidad. And finally, we have Jeffery Brown, a corporate investment banker at the National Commercial Bank, Jamaica, and he's a structuring and loan syndication specialist for the bank, working with corporates and governments to provide bespoke financial solutions. So a range of different types of institutions here offering perhaps some different options. So I would like to start with Stacy, if you want to tell us a little bit about your institution and how are you supporting and funding development around the region.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And also thanks to the organizers for having us here today. CAF is very well known across Latin America, perhaps less so in the Caribbean, and so it's a fantastic opportunity, having recently established the Office for the Caribbean, to be able to share with you today some of the experiences and also some of the products and services that are offered by CAF. So let me start with the basics. CAF stands for Corporación Andina de Fomento, which translates into the Development Bank for Latin America and the Caribbean. It is an organization that has had economic and investment support for Latin America and the Caribbean for over 52 years. And its current portfolio is roughly $30 billion, and it has recently received an historic capital increase of $7 billion, which will translate into the doubling of its portfolio to over $60 billion by 2030. As a multilateral development bank, the focus is primarily on two areas which relate to sustainable development and economic integration. And so our support to the private sector has traditionally not been as an end in itself, but as a means to an end, and therefore helping to stimulate economic activity with a primary focus on sustainable financing and making sure that we leverage different financial opportunities as well as our access to green funds as an accredited entity for many of the large green financing thematic funds across the globe. So we do offer a range of financial instruments. So some of these span the traditional loans and technical assistance, but also lines of credit, guarantees, structured financing, co-financing, and many others. One of the things I'd like to highlight is that through our engagements with sovereign and non-sovereign clients over the years, CAF has become very well known for its agility and flexibility. And so being client-focused and having that commitment to working with accelerated timelines to be able to respond to the needs of clients is something that's very dear to our mission. So I'll pause there and allow some of our other panelists to
Thank you very much.
share.
I have some questions already, but we will indeed circle back. Kristina, tell us, first of all, I guess, what is the interest of the European Investment Bank and the EU in general in the region, and what kind of support are you providing?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Courtney. And you already heard yesterday from the EU Ambassador, Peter Cavendish, so I'll complement his remarks. So the European Investment Bank is the EU's lending arm. So we support the policies and values of the European Union globally. So we're headquartered in Luxembourg, but we do operate in 160 countries, and we have an office in Barbados as well as in the Dominican Republic. And we have been in the Caribbean since 1978. But like Stacy was talking about the CAF, we are a development finance institution, so we look for the broader impact of our projects to the people and to the planet. And in this region, we've already committed over 2 billion euros in over 200 projects over the years. And our lending is very much aligned with the priorities of the European Union for the region. So the Global Gateway initiative that the ambassador was talking about yesterday, the 300 billion investment package for infrastructure, we support that, and we support the 3 partnerships that the European Union has for this region. So the Green Deal Partnership, the Economic Resilience and Trade, and the Governance, Security, and Human Development Partnership. And we are also seen as the EU's climate bank. So that's really at the core of our activity. And we adopted in 2015 our climate strategy and associated targets. So we were the first multilateral development bank to align our operations with the Paris Agreement, meaning that all our operations are aligned with those targets coming from that, as well as the associated low carbon pathways. And last year, 51% of our total financing went to climate action and environmental sustainability. So our interest is, of course, on that, but also in this region, in addition to climate action and infrastructure financing, we have been very active in promoting private sector development, in particular through intermediated lending to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And like CAF, we can mobilize a variety of instruments, so we can do sovereign and non-sovereign lending, we can invest in private equity funds, we can mobilize donor financing from European Commission and others to have technical assistance, investment grants, and guarantees. And in this region in particular, we would like to work on climate action, and we also have a new regional water program and a new program promoting access to green finance for MSMEs. And we also work a lot with the Caribbean Development Bank.
Great. Thank you very much. And Nigel, tell us a bit about your bank and its activities around the region, and more importantly, what type of financing options are available.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So the Republic Financial Holdings Limited Group is a regional group that actually in the Caribbean have a presence in 14 of our countries. And we provide the full range of financial services. And we even recently launched our own life insurance company. From an opportunities for financing perspective, we really do everything that the previous speakers spoke about, providing finance to both governments and private individuals. as well as private corporations of all various sizes. We have been around for over 186 years in the Caribbean, and I don't think there's probably anything that we haven't seen or done. But more recently, what we have tried to focus on and try and get a little bit more activity in are the areas of climate finance. So we launched a climate finance fund just over a year ago, as well as sustainable agriculture. So we launched a sustainable agriculture facility probably around the same time. We've also been trying to see to what extent we can develop the small and medium enterprises in the Caribbean. So a lot of work has been done. We have a small and medium enterprises unit. We have a small and medium enterprise financing facility. We've also tried to focus on the role of women and developed a particular product for that woman, working with partners throughout the Caribbean. And we've seen some traction from that. So basically, the Republic Financial Holdings Limited Group, right, is able to support in a wide variety of areas, and we look forward to doing so.
Thank you very much. Jeffery, tell us about the National Commercial Bank and likewise your activities and what can you support?
Thank you. So I'm here representing the National Commercial Bank, Jamaica Limited. We are also a regional bank. We are covering LATAM and the Caribbean. We are head office in Jamaica, but we have physical presence in Barbados, Trinidad, and of course, we're recently launching an office in Guyana via our NCB Capital Markets. In terms of the products that we have on offering, it depends on where you are in your life cycle as a business, right? And it's very clear that throughout the NCB Financial Group, we are there wherever you are in the stage of your life cycle. So if it's an early investment where you require patient capital, which usually comes in the form of equity and or mezzanine financing, there's NCB Capital Markets Jamaica and their regional offices that governs and distribute that type of product and have that reach. And they will help you to find a solution that works at that level. If you are a small and medium-sized entity within the NCB Financial Group, we have a designated segment for SMEs, and that is headed in Jamaica, but we do provide the service regionally as well. And it's resource that is focused primarily within small and medium-sized entities and getting them to transition from small and medium-sized entities into large corporates. When you think about large corporates, you know that those transactions are way more bespoke, pretty much more tailored. No transactions are the same. There is the NCB corporate banking team, which is a team of 8 bankers that is head office in Jamaica as well, but covers the length and breadth of the region and LATAM. And we're not afraid to go anywhere, even if we don't have a physical presence in that country. And as it relates to long-term loan and syndications and significantly difficult transactions, that's where I would come in terms of helping to provide that type of solution and working along with governments, private entities, and quasi-public-private entities to get them a solution that works depending on the project. If it's an infrastructure project, we have the expertise. If it's tourism, we have the expertise. If it's agri-technology, wherever you are, we are willing to get there and meet you.
Thank you very much. I have quite a few questions, but I'll start with Stacy, and actually others may want to also weigh in, and that is around green funds and climate finance. And most of you raised that as a topic, but Stacy, I'm curious, how is green financing evolving, and where do you see it headed? And is there enough, I guess, capacity in terms of lending and financing for the big demand?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a critical question. From the side of CAF, we are, of course, the Green Bank for Latin America and the Caribbean. A lot of our commitment in terms of the capital increase will go in this area. We have already committed to mobilizing $25 billion over the next 5 years to drive climate action as well as biodiversity conservation and projects of this nature. And for us, that is going to be of significant importance, working with our member countries and, of course, many of our counterpart institutions. One of the things I'd like to mention is that we also work very closely with financial intermediaries, and that level of coordination within the financial space, I believe, is something that's going to be even more critical as we move forward. Certainly the Caribbean as a small space with a history of fragmentation because we have disparate islands scattered across the Caribbean Sea, it's going to be very important for many of the lending agencies and the development partners to come together and work in a coordinated manner as we seek to provide relevant and timely development assistance to the different entities. So for instance, Kristina and I will be having lunch today with our two teams that are present here today to advance those discussions and learn more about what the EIB is doing as well as CAF, so that we can continue to work together and ensure that we are meeting the needs and addressing the gaps. And similarly, with all of our panelists and other institutions, CAF stands ready to have those discussions. I spoke earlier with the CDB representative. We do think that there's a ripe opportunity for us to look at how we pool resources and how we move forward together to ensure that level of targeted response.
Yeah, that's actually quite relevant, because I was wondering about how you avoid duplicating efforts and kind of joining forces to mobilize enough financing.
Absolutely important.
Yes. Well, Kristina, it's a natural segue to you. Is there anything you want to add about how climate finance is evolving and can be applied here? But another question I would have for you is, your strategy's aligned, obviously, with EU development goals, with the Paris Accords. How plugged in are you also, and how top of mind are the UN Sustainable Development Goals in terms of what you do?
Absolutely. So let me start with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So in addition, obviously, being aligned with the EU, we are very much aligned with those, and EU is aligned with those. So that's the other metric that we look at very closely in terms of the impact of our operations. But to go back to what Stacy was saying, and I absolutely agree with everything you said in terms of the need to coordinate with all of our partners, because we know that climate finance is not enough, so we need to make it more efficient. And what we as an institution in particular are looking at now is also climate change adaptation, and we all know that not a lot of the total funds go to adaptation. So as an institution, we have set ourselves a target of having 15% of our total climate finance for adaptation by 2025. So that's obviously something that we also very much look for in the Caribbean, that is particularly vulnerable to climate change. And we have existing credit lines with the Caribbean Development Bank, with whom we have been working for many years and have over 200 million in credit lines, mainly dedicated to climate action. So through that and through the partnership with them, we do reach many of the islands and finance many projects. But we also have two new programs for the region. One is called the Green and Inclusive Recovery Program, and this will be working with public financial intermediaries to lend to MSMEs for them to access green finance. And I think we've heard a lot over the last days of the barriers that these companies face, and one of them is access to finance and also access to green finance. So we'll cover different aspects like energy efficiency, renewable energy, clean transport, sustainable agriculture, and so on. And we'll support that also with technical assistance. And I think in the last panel, someone said it's not only about the access to finance, but it's about the access to technical support. So technical assistance is needed, grants are needed, and also the expertise of institutions like present here are needed to support those investments. And the other program that I would particularly highlight is called Sustainable Water Management and Clean Oceans Program, which is also regional, and where we also hope to collaborate with many partners. And that will support a range of investments in water supply, flood prevention, stormwater collection, wastewater management, and so on. And we'll have a very strong climate component as well.
Thank you very much. And staying in this vein for a bit longer, Nigel, can you tell us a little bit more about your Climate Finance Fund? How does it work?
Sure. So we would have signed up to the Net Zero Banking Alliance last year, or at the end of 2020, and set our 2030 and 2050 goals. And the Climate Finance Fund, which we started off with a 200 million quantum, was really aimed to support the sustainable development goals that the various countries in which we operate would have espoused. And all of our subsidiaries identified 2 or 3 of these climate-related but generally sustainable goals. And in the case of the fund, what I think we try to do with that fund is meet our clients where they want it to be. And what we understood as being the biggest challenge was really sometimes the technical assistance to really appreciate the changes that were possible in their respective businesses. So in terms of how the fund works, I think the most important part is the technical assistance that we're offering through various subject matter experts in the different areas, and it really covers the full range. So from water, right, to air, and the basics in terms of cheaper financing, different structures, etc. But what I think makes the difference is the technical assistance that we were willing to provide. We have seen pretty decent responses, but you have found that the responses are tied to the local economic situations. So that, for example, the lowest response has been in Trinidad. And that's because, when the economics are determined, the economics are not quite there because Trinidad still has a lot of its energy being subsidized. And people don't really appreciate the alternatives. So it's a little harder road in Trinidad, but we have found excellent responses in jurisdictions like Barbados, Cayman Islands, even Guyana. And it's something which it's a start, our fund start, and really we're looking forward to being able to do a lot more for businesses and individuals in the Caribbean.
Thank you very much. Jeffery, is green financing something that your bank is involved with?
Yeah, and we're pretty active in that space. We have not gone the route of establishing specific funding for climate change and financing projects of that nature. What we've done is we've identified bespoke projects that are necessary for the transition, right? We are very active in power and utilities, and up to last year, we financed up to $50 million for solar and wind farm. We are still the largest lender to wind and solar in Jamaica and spreading north, because the deal covered both Jamaica, Cayman, Guatemala, and also we're doing things in Bahamas and Barbados that involve greener technologies. But the challenge I have, and the challenge that the customers have as well, is that they're not getting to bankable projects, right? And we can stand here, or we can sit here, and we can establish all these funds we want. The reality is that, can we find bankable opportunities to deploy the capital? Because in my opinion, I don't think we have a capital problem when it comes to getting green financing. We have the lack of bankable projects. So for the entrepreneurs in the room, it is on them as well, because the banks can't be too entrepreneurial in the space. We're using depositors' monies, so we have to be more prudent. But the entrepreneurs have to get there with the technical ideas and get the expertise and lean on the development banks to get the data that they need and the support, so that they can get to an idea, do the feasibility studies, get to a bankable idea, and now the bankers can step in to meet you there with the type of financing you need, albeit equity, debt, mezzanine financing. But for me right now, it's an absence of bankable projects.
Yeah, this is a point that we've heard a few times throughout the event, which means that it's something that needs to be addressed. Something else that you mentioned that came up in one of my panels yesterday was around the need for entrepreneurs to be able to provide the right information and data, and it sounds like that's something that you're coming across as well.
Yeah, and I would strongly agree with that, because the development banks do publish information that is publicly available as well. But for instance, they look at a solar plant. You will need solar studies to show whether or not the sunlight is going to provide enough electricity. You'll need P50 and P99. These are all technical things that, because we finance projects within that space, we understand. But it's not just putting up panels anywhere you feel like, because you think there's green financing available. There's a lot more that goes behind you seeing these panels being established in different locations across countries.
Yeah, Nigel, are these constraints that you run into as well?
To some extent, but this is where the technical assistance is very important. And the bankable projects are not going to, let's say, fall out of the sky. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm sure you do it with your clients.
Yes.
So what I'm seeing is maybe there is a preconceived notion as to how banks like ours kind of would approach these projects.
Yeah.
And so there is a need for us to kind of go outside there and show to the client that we are a little bit more open than maybe historically we have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really want to encourage people to use external advice. You know, and I think if they do use the external advice, it improves the chances. For the bankable projects, there's a role that many different sectors have to play in it. I mean, the government has a role to play in making some of these projects bankable. The financial institutions have a role to play, really, in terms of how we structure the projects. But many of us are more open, okay, to structuring, to ensure the success of the projects because we understand the long-term implications of it. But yes, I mean, there's an issue with respect to information. There's an issue with respect to how the plans are developed. But the insight and the assistance is available outside. And really, we need to encourage the entrepreneurs, as you've indicated.
Yeah, we have to
take advantage of that.
Because ultimately, if they get the technical help from your institutions which are geared towards development financing, because at the end of it all, we are trying to get to sustainable development or getting on a path of continued sustainable development. And if we do that, the financing is always going to be there, because at the end of the day, we have to get to that point. It's not a chance that we're thinking about, we have to get there. So the entrepreneurs have to understand, because they're chasing returns as well. They're investors, right? But we are banks as well, so we have to generate returns for investors. So we have to find the risk-adjusted return for everybody.
I think let's add one other point with technical assistance, you know, and it's a challenge that we have encountered, and so we've tried to design around it. You know, it's sometimes the cost of the technical assistance. That's a bit of an obstacle as well. Yes. So in a couple of our facilities, you know, we do provide some grants to assist with the technical assistance required. And this is where, as you indicated, I mean, if that technical assistance could be provided for free, okay, by development institutions or heavily subsidized, it will certainly help the entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I think maybe if I can add to that, I completely agree with your comments, and that's why I think often in our projects we have technical assistance, like in the 2 flagship projects that I mentioned on water and small-scale green investment. We have technical assistance to, first of all, identify projects and then to prepare them. And thinking of financial intermediaries, in particular, those facilities that we have are very sort of demand-driven, so the financial intermediaries tell us what do they need. And often it is to develop non-financial services to their clients for particular segments, be it for women entrepreneurs or for green loans that then we provide for free through the donor funding that we have, with the hope that this will demonstrate to the market that green loans or products for women entrepreneurs are viable products, and eventually you will not need technical assistance. So that's how I would very much see the role of development finance institutions to catalyze that type of investments, hoping that the market eventually will take over.
Well, Christine, what I would suggest as well, there is still a gap between people, well, young students and young professionals seeing this path as a viable career, right? And as part of your mandate as a development bank, it is important that you plant that seed in the universities as well, because they shouldn't just see themselves as scientists. They have to be able to monetize that skill set. And if you are saying to them that the industry is going this way, inform them that they can choose applicable majors that are lining up with the conveyor belt of talent that is needed, because they're coming out of university as good advanced scientists that we will need to guide us to transition into, is it solar financing, is it wind, is it water, is it geothermal? They have to be incentivized to know that these are things that they should be focused on, because we're picking from that pool for the next wave.
I absolutely agree with you, and I think maybe the strength of the European Investment Bank is that we are the EU's lending arm. So the European Union has a lot of programs related to education, also in the Caribbean, many programs that can specifically demonstrate and highlight those issues which our financing and CUP financing can then link to, because indeed if you don't have the skill set and the mindset that these are viable careers, then you don't have a pipeline of projects at the end.
Exactly.
Stacy, what would you add to this?
Sure. Just to add that the role of development banks like CAF with the third-party financiers through the thematic funds like Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, that's also very important. I've seen where CAF as an accredited entity has managed to receive approval from the Adaptation Fund for a sizable project, $10 million grant that will be channeled through the University of the West Indies, and therefore coming back to your point, Jeffrey, about boosting the capacity and providing some dedicated grant resources to the education institutions that can then help to build out this ecosystem across the region and stimulate entrepreneurial and innovative activities that can then help to give a boost to more sustainable approaches to productive capacity and engagement in the private sector.
And Stacy, how do you judge the quality and quantity of projects? Jeffrey mentioned a kind of dearth of bankable projects. Do you see it that way? And how do you make your decisions on which projects you would support?
Certainly, and we heard it this morning from our colleague from McKinsey that this is really one of the areas that is ripe for opportunity to have a facility that manages and that helps to bring bankable projects to the table and to bring them closer to investors. From our side, one of the things that's really critical is, of course, development impact and looking at the alignment of projects with the Sustainable Development Goals and the national development priorities that have been set by member countries. In addition to that, I would add financial sustainability would be key and has always been key in the evaluation of projects. Certainly the profitability side, because of course these are investments in private sector entities, and also the management of risk is something that's very, very important. But for us, we have seen where in the Caribbean space, a lot of the times, one of the hindrances has to do with scale of operation, and of course, how we can facilitate as a development bank the achievement of scalable projects and the requisite volume for certain procurement of goods and services that will make the investment attractive and also more profitable. I think that's something.
How do you get around that issue of scale?
Well, that's something we continue to work on, because as a bank that's committed to regional integration, that's one of the areas that we really focus on. And we, by establishing the office in the Caribbean, it's about building and strengthening the bridge between Latin America and the Caribbean small island states, so that we can both share experiences and lessons learned, but also help to pool capacity, resources, and the ability to scale up on some of the procurement opportunities.
One thing I wonder is how much geography and location matters about the projects and how you view their investability, as it were. I mean, are the bankable, attractive projects spread evenly around the region, or are there some countries where it's due to politics, location, whatever it is, you can't touch them?
No, I think it's a little bit more technical than that, because if you're looking at solar, it's about the solar studies, right? Mm-hmm. And the availability of sunlight. Mm-hmm. We can't put that, we don't decide where the sun rises and sets each day and how much sunlight is in a country. Also with the water situation, it's who has the falls, who has the velocity going through the turbines to generate the power. But to the point that you are making, Stacy, with regards to the continuous development of talent, the financial capital is there. The human capital is an issue. For us to be ingraining sustainable development in how we bank, we are implementing ESG consultants on all projects that we work on, and that's mandatory. So if we're doing anything that involves construction, we're going in the ground, we have to get the opinion of the ESG consultant to ensure that we're doing things that are not negatively impacting our environment. We're considering the social impact, and of course, that includes looking at the women in the workforce, the economics around the project site. Are we impacting the local economy? Are we benefiting the geography as we ought to? And of course, governance has to be in a way that we think supports sustainable development.
I just want to take up the point about the financial capital, okay? Because at a very high level, and at a US dollar equivalency, the financial capital might be there. Mm-hmm. But the challenges, and these are challenges that I think both from the EIB and CAF would have to address. The challenge really is the financial capital in the currency of the country. Mm-hmm. Mm. Because a lot of the financing that is provided or that is available tends to be in US dollars. And in some countries, the US dollar repayment capability is what would undermine the viability of the project. You know, so that we know in many of the territories that we operate, and it's one of the reasons why even though all of our facilities are denominated in US dollars, you know, we say it's disbursed in the local currency, because the ability to repay is what many of the businesses, the entrepreneurs, will have to kind of consider, whether it be a climate finance facility or whether it be an agriculture facility or any other type of facility, because they would generate either the savings or the income in the local currency, unless they were doing what they were doing for an export market, which is not generally the case, with the potential exception of the agriculture area. And when it comes to scale, I think agriculture and geography has a big say there, okay? In the sense that, you know, Guyana has this initiative that it is spearheading for the Caribbean region, right, to reduce the import bill by 25% by 2025. And Guyana could be the food basket for the region. And Guyana could supply, you know, either the basic raw material or the processed material for many of the other Caribbean countries. And that is something which I know that the various governments, Barbados, Trinidad, etc., are working with the Guyana government. And there are a number of projects that are actually on the schedule to be considered. So I do think that while at a general level the financial capital is available, if you come down into the local countries and you're going to the local currency level, you know, that is something which I think that the certainly development institutions, foreign-based development institutions, need to consider. How do you address that aspect?
Absolutely, and in some markets we do have local currency lending products, because we do hear obviously that comment, so that's something that we sometimes develop. Maybe I would just say on the scale that obviously it's a challenge for us to work in some of the smaller countries because of kind of the minimum ticket size that we need, but that's why we work often with partners, like through financial intermediaries that are based in those countries, through the Caribbean Development Bank, so that we can, you know, reach those countries. And I think there is important to collaborate and coordinate to structure the types of projects that have the necessary scale to get involved.
And if I can add to Nigel's point, it's really important that we continue, and certainly for CAF this is a priority, to have that client focus and to assess projects on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. Because in the instances where the local currency, you know, that conversion is a factor, we have had that response to be able to issue and to structure the instrument that will be able to respond and to serve the needs of the client so that they have the ability to repay in local currency.
Thank you. I think we'll open up the floor to questions now, so I hope you'll not be too shy. It's much more interesting if you engage us. And if you do have a question, I'm sorry, blocking out the light so I can see you, please raise your hand or even stand up. Yes, there's a question in the middle. Microphone should be coming. And do tell us who you are and who you represent.
Sure. Shan Coffee Young, founder and CEO of a social enterprise called Eisele Environmental. And we work primarily in the waste management space. But the question really is about, there are a number of, I'm not speaking on my own behalf necessarily, but on some of my colleagues whose enterprises are based on nature-based solutions. And so because we live in the Caribbean and we are significantly affected by the effects of climate change, how do the banks, have you guys considered what financing would look like for an enterprise that is based solely on nature, on waste? You know, what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Could you please expound more on, you said nature and waste, is it waste management?
Yes, so I use some of my colleagues. So in the north, well, almost the central part of Trinidad and Tobago, there are a lot of them that provide tours, like Carney Swamp tours, or they depend heavily on, you know, agroforestry and things like that. And so their business model is based on the use of nature. So when they are significantly affected by nature, like we expect, Met Office said we're supposed to get a lot of rain today and tomorrow. That significantly affects their ability to earn, and so it would affect their ability to repay. So I just wanted to find out, have you considered what funding would look like for an organization like that?
I could go if you wish.
Go ahead.
I think you're looking at the business in two folds, right? One, that's more hospitality because you're providing an attraction for guests in terms of the tours, right? And if we're financing a business like that, that is open and open to natural resources such as natural hazards like hurricanes, we would ensure that we finance a business interruption risk insurance as part of your financing. So when we extend the facility to you to either buy the ATVs or buy the equipment that you use to provide the tours, we would finance an insurance program as well. So in the event that there's a natural hazard and you're unable to generate income, that business interruption risk insurance would kick in and give you some income while you wait, and hopefully it sustains you to get through that process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
I mean, what I could add is, the challenge is always the cost, right? So, the insurance would have an additional debt servicing cost while it does give you the protection. The solution there really and truly revolves around discussion and designing, right, an appropriate financing solution or approach or structure for that business, whatever the nature of that business is. I think once you have a good understanding of what your cash flows can be, and you factor into that understanding of your cash flows the possibility of disruption, because we have a reasonable sense. I mean, obviously things happen that are outside of our control, but you have a reasonable sense of what the likely disruptions might be to the cash flow. If you sit down, and from the bank side, it's us having the individuals who could understand that and provide the assistance a little bit more broadly than the specialists or the one or two individuals that we tend to have. And from your side, it's really understanding the cash flows and understanding what the interruptions could be. A bespoke solution could be arrived at. That doesn't necessarily involve, let's say, monthly payments. Okay? But there must be some repayment. Okay? So the cash flow needs to support the ability to repay in the first instance, even if it is not monthly, as might be the traditional approach.
And I think what Nigel is alluding to as well, for like hospitality type financing, during high season you would take higher payments on principal, and then in low season you would take interest only. So those kind of things that would be tailored to based on your needs and your cash flows.
I would just maybe talk a little bit about EIB's work on nature-based solutions. That's definitely something we finance under different sectors, urban sector, for example. And I mean, we really look at resilience in our investments, or resilience to climate events or other events, so how the investment would be designed, that impact should be taken into account and mitigated against. And we also have kind of innovative facilities, maybe more inside the European Union, to look at like natural capital. We have a facility called the Natural Capital Financing Facility, where we actually design projects that are, for example, tourism. We rewild, for example, a particular area in Europe and generate revenues from tourism to try to demonstrate that that's a viable business model and can be scaled across other countries. So we work around that theme both from the resilience angle across our investments and then actual particular projects to try to generate this type of.
Thank you.
And just to add similarly, that I believe this is where the deep dive conversations with clients really become very critical, and it allows for not only the technical support and technical assessment and sharing of lessons learned from other projects, but also for the financial input and financial advice, technical advisory services, and also some of the risk management support that could be beneficial in these types of nature-based projects. Or clients that are leveraging these types of nature-based solutions. I wanted to add, I think there's another important point for working with a multilateral like CAF, in that because we do also have members such as Spain and Portugal who are member countries of CAF, what we can provide is also that type of technical assistance through operations with private sector firms coming from those countries as well, working in collaboration with our Caribbean clients. And so always, I think it's useful to think not only about what we can do ourselves in the region, but how we leverage partnerships with other institutions that have worked on some similar projects in other jurisdictions, but then, as Nigel said, to co-create bespoke solutions and bespoke approaches that will be applicable to support our clients and our companies in the region.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Do we have others? No. Okay. If you change your mind.
I think I
Wait,
see
sorry, you are there in the middle. Sorry, I'm completely blinded. Please do go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I just want to raise the question relating to the constant statement that the challenge for the investment banks, or even the commercial banks, is the lack of project flow. There's not enough bankable projects, the business cases are not being made. So I want to ask what do you believe is the reason for that? Is it a case that there are not enough viable opportunities? Is it that there's not the technical capacity of the sponsors to prepare the projects? What is the cause? And secondly, do you see a role for yourselves in facilitating that process? Is there an opportunity for the commercial banks to work with the development banks, development institutions, to create maybe a fund or some technical support for the projects to be prepared? Because if you're saying that these are areas for investment, but the challenge is that the projects are not there, what is the cause for that? Do we have some response to that, so we have an idea how we move forward from the constant complaint that the projects are not there?
I can maybe start. I mean, for me, there are two things. One is that not enough funds are being spent on project identification and definition of bankable projects in the first place. And sometimes those funds are very difficult to access or very costly in terms of human capital. And the second thing is that there are a lot of different project preparation facilities. Some are sectoral, some are geographical, often run by different organizations or by different groupings of organizations. And they target kind of different stages. So they are early stage, later stage. And it's very difficult for a company or a public organization to navigate through that system and to move from one preparation facility to another one. So I think more funds are needed, but also much more coordination is needed between these different facilities and to ensure that they have a more streamlined application procedure and more similar requirements, because often people have to provide kind of similar information to different facilities, and that comes with a huge labor cost, of course. So coordination and streamlining is important.
So Jeffrey, I reckon you better answer this one as well.
Yeah, I would just add that, yes, there is the gap between the technical ability and the idea, because what you'll find, could you remind me of your name, sir?
Yeah, Vasa, straight from
Hey, Vasa, what's up, man?
Yeah, man, yeah, bro.
So
tell me why this is a constant challenge.
Because I think the idea of the entrepreneur is that they don't understand that going into green energy is more technical than just entrepreneurship. It's a more specialized skill than people give it respect for, right? So understanding that you want to build a solar plant is not just buying panels and putting up a solar plant. There's a lot more feasibility and groundwork that goes into the idea, Vassal, than people give the respect in the industry. And I think we as bankers have a responsibility to communicate to the general masses that there is knowledge available via the development banks. There is expertise reports that are available widely and publicly. Get into reading these and seeking the advice of the public, and then we can get into developing the idea, because the ideas are there. They're not just as developed as they should be.
Thank you very much.
Just quickly,
we do have other questions, sir, but go ahead.
Just a quick addition.
Go ahead.
I know you're speaking specifically to green energy, but the same argument could be made for other areas of investment.
Yeah.
So I think that's an issue that we have to look at, perhaps between the development banks and the commercial banks, how we solve that problem.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for the question and comments. I think we have a question there in the back. Do go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Steve Cupid Theodore. I'm a prospective doctoral student here at the University of the West Indies. My first question is for Kristina. the EU has provided funding for renewable energy communities across, I think it's 9 European countries. And my question has to do with whether the EIB has identified similar projects and communities throughout the Caribbean that focus on job creation, on really intensive, sort of labor-intensive projects that communities can take up on their own, that are really community-driven, community-owned and led. Does the bank see potential in the Caribbean for that, given that right now it is not anywhere near the level of the take-up and development in Europe? And my second question just goes to Nigel, pretty much on the same topic, which is given where the development is in Trinidad and Tobago, and the need for community members to actually see an opportunity in distributed renewable energy projects. Is it worth it for a company looking at that to even be looking to even establish itself in Trinidad and Tobago, or should they really even just simply work outside in other parts of the Caribbean?
Thank you for the questions. We'll start with Kristina with her answer.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I understood the first part of my question, but let me answer the second part and then maybe you can clarify. So we have this new program called the Green and Inclusive Program that would provide intermediated lending to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises and also to, for example, homeowners associations and municipalities, amongst others. So I think that type of program would precisely be, what we would be offering in the Caribbean, and it also would cover renewable energy, so small-scale renewable energy for small enterprises or for house owners. So I think that's, we're precisely setting up something that you're asking about, if I understood your question correctly.
Did you want to clarify the first part, or has Kristina answered your question essentially?
I didn't see.
Well, actually, perhaps we could speak about it more at length later. But I was really focusing on the kinds of community-led projects that often tend to not focus so much on how much job creation they're doing. I think that oftentimes they do focus on distributed generation, issues of the challenges with storage and so on. But even in the European context, there's so many sort of there's issues of scale, there's issues of scaling up to a level where we can see the kinds of impacts that we're looking for with respect to climate change and so on.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll turn to Nigel for your question.
Yeah. So Trinidad is a tough market, right, to justify or support renewable or alternative energy financing, and the setup of some structure to try and advance it. And I'll give you an example of a project that the bank is involved in for its own accord. We are completing the design for a new branch that is a consolidation of a couple of our existing branches. And so we are running the numbers to show, okay, fine, as we try to transition ourselves because of our own commitment to alternative energy sources, what it would mean in terms of the investment required and the payback, looking at the potential savings. And the payback period, right, for a simple project, which is really solar, 40% of your own needs, with something in the region of like 50-something years, right? Using the energy prices in Trinidad and what you would be saving. So, we nevertheless press it on and going to do whatever is required because, we have that commitment on that side. But I could see from a private entity perspective, coming to a financial institution for financing, and this is what the numbers look like. Makes it a little bit tough if you take the kind of a narrow view. Now, our view is that over those 50 years, things have to evolve in the country. It can't continue where it is. But it's difficult to kind of justify and sell that, to someone else.
Thank you very much. There a question here?
Rudolph Anamji, EY Caribbean Business Development, but I also am a founding member of the FinTech Association of Trinidad and Tobago. So Nigel, forgive me, it's going to be a loaded question as one of our best clients. But Stacy, one of the last projects I worked on in a former incarnation was a financial inclusion project that CAF funded here in Trinidad. And the question, Courtney, to your panelists is simply this. Yesterday and earlier today, we've touched on the smarter part, the technology part. Perhaps you all can share some of your perspectives on where we are, where are some of the gaps in the more complex fintech arena, maybe a call to action to persons in the private sector, or even the central banks around the region, to put some gusto behind that to solve some of these financing and monitoring problems that you all have been touching on. So it's more for the benefit of others, but I thought I would throw that out to you guys.
Thank you. Very, very good question. We've got only maybe about 4 minutes left, but let's see how we can tackle it. Who would like to address this one? Now, you got name check of Stacy and
Sure.
I believe. So
Yes. No, I'll go first. No, totally, support the angle that you've put forward, because fintech and just looking at how we promote digital transformation, digital technologies in all that we do, and also boost financial inclusion as a development bank is something that is near and dear to our work and our mission, our core mission. As I said earlier, for us, it's not only about the financial returns, it's really about how we use our modalities for development assistance to drive the development agenda forward for the region. And of course, in a space like the Caribbean, financial inclusion is going to be at the heart of that, and also how we incorporate digital technologies to expand access and participation, and also to strengthen the development of the private sector ecosystem more broadly is something that will be continue to be a priority.
Thank you. Are you others supporting fintech?
We definitely are, and think in terms of the central bank being supportive in Jamaica, our central bank launched the FinTech Sandbox as well, and we being NCB Group, we launched the first digital wallet, which is Link, and it's been fully utilized. I think up to about 100,000 subscribers now that are actively using the software as settlement. So there's incentive we're pushing through that medium to get people along the ecosystem of using electronic payments and digital wallets. We're not there where we want to be yet, but there is resource being pushed behind this kind of product to get to the unbanked in the economy.
Thank you. Kristina?
Yes, we work a lot with financial intermediaries and with microfinancing institutions across the world, and particularly with microfinancing institutions in the Caribbean, for example, in the Dominican Republic. And a lot of that work is about fintech and digitalization. But I would pick on something that Stacy said, which is about expanding access and kind of the wider impact of fintech. So what we would very much look for is who will be accessing it. Is it a greater number of women entrepreneurs? Is it low-income people who don't have access otherwise? Or for example, in some jurisdictions, we offer financial products to refugees, and all this digitalization can facilitate that. So it's not only about the product, but it's really like what is the wider development impact and what greater access that will generate. That's important to us.
And I'll just say that the challenge with fintech is the word fintech itself. Because fintech is very broad, and there are some aspects of it that appeal and that are useful from a financial inclusion perspective. And then there are other terms that are also covered under the word fintech that might not be as desirable. And so somewhere along the line, the industry needs to wake up and maybe have a fintech A, fintech B, fintech C, okay, and be very, very specific. The Republic Bank Group also has an e-wallet in Trinidad, and it's going to be rolled out throughout the Caribbean. The take-up has been slower than we would have liked, certainly not the kind of number that you're referring to there. Yeah. But maybe over time, we'll see how that goes. But I think, as I said, the challenge with fintech and fintech financing is the word fintech.
There you go. You need to do a rebrand. Sir, I'm incredibly sorry. We have to wrap up now. I'm very sorry we didn't get to your question, but feel free to maybe ask privately if you want to catch any of our speakers when they exit. But thank you very much. You were all excellent, and I wish we had more time, not only for the additional questions, but just for the continued discussion. Thank you for the questions that were posed and for your attention. And I'll hand back over.
Thank you so very much. Fantastic job, ladies and gentlemen. Bank on us, Countney Fingar, our moderator, who always finishes with time to spare. Certainly what I took away from it is, a lot of us have, our thoughts about banking, especially from the traditional sense, but what I got from the panelists really is that it's so much more than product and profitability, but rather about people, progress, and the impact, the social as well as the economic impact that banks and of course other investment spaces have on the people. So thank you so very much. I appreciate all the insights, and I wish you guys all the best. And certainly the rebrand of FinTech, you've given us a lot to think about. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where I remind you, take the poll, you know the drill, QR code, middle of the table, just scan that and let us hear your feedback after this session. We also want to remind you, the Republic Bank Limited has the Amazon Echo Dot giving away, and all you have to do is scan the code. You can scan the code at their booth, or sometimes I think we might put it up on the screen. So all you have to do is scan the code and you automatically get a chance, and we will announce the winner later on, closer to the end of day. Now, we had Chef Zamora come in yesterday and she spoke about the taste of Trinidad. I am really excited to hear what she has planned for our taste buds today. So ladies and gentlemen, we put our hands together as we invite Chef Zanisha Samaru as she tells us about the taste that we can expect for lunch. Please make her welcome. I can't wait. Thank you. No, sure. Yeah. Let me help you out. Let me help you.
What a guan. Everything Irie?
Everything cool.
All right. Good day all. I am truly proud and honored again to come here to chat a bit with you lovely folks. My name, as everyone knows, in short, Chef Z. And I am here just sending you all a little more love. You all are indeed wonderful. I know for a fact that today I get you all to smile, because it's almost time to eat up a belly full. We're bringing to you the spices and flavor of Montego Bay, people! Yay! Yes! You all must have guessed by now that the menu is bursting with all traditions and of the blessed, beautiful island called
Jamaica!
Yes! Jamaica brings to mind beautiful beaches and laid-back culture, and of course, the easy rhythm of reggae music. There's nothing better than eating jerk fresh, flavorful of pimento, or the taste of a summer's cold red stripe. Right, people?
Yes.
One of the most striking features of this Caribbean island is its delicious food and unique spices, from jerk chicken to the famous Jamaican patties. The flavors of this island have, I say, my term is, bewitched the whole world taste buds. Yesterday, people, I sent you all on an ultimate food tour. Not today. Today, I send you on a culinary adventure. Jamaica is a feast for the taste buds, and at every corner of this big little island, right, you'll find something to whet up your appetite. Today's menu, let me tell you, I'm not going to take much longer. We have jerk pork. We have jerk swordfish. We have rice and beans. We have plantain casserole, amongst a lot of other things. I'm not going to read it. I'm trying to even talk like a Jamaican. Rice and peas, just a little bit, is mostly with any type of rice and is available with a variety of legumes. Black eye, red bean, lentil, whatever you want. Jamaica knows how to make it, and this dish is actually a mainstay of Jamaican cuisine. Jerk is just a symphony, and I use the word symphony, of different spices because they all blend so well together, rendered in your meat of choice. I bet now all of you are excited, even more to indulge than yesterday, right? I leave you now. One love, blessing, hail up, which is another short and effective way of saying hello. Bye, Rastas. But remember, you don't have to be dread to be a Rasta, right? Right. Do enjoy, lovely people. Do enjoy this feast. And also, I partner with Ina de Moros. See you later. Bless up all and stay safe.
Oh, thank you. Oh, you did us proud. Oh man, Chef Z, you did us proud. I want to just pack you up in my suitcase and just take you straight to my island. She says, see you in the morrows. I mean, we couldn't have thought of a better way to send you to lunch. Let me tell you, her introduction to the dish that is from my island make us want to shankle dip. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please go mix, mingle, enjoy yourself, eat the nice food in the Port of Spain ballroom, and we will meet back here at 2 o'clock. Take care.
Oh, that's so nice. So nice.